In HTML, there is an inline element called the line break. It's kind of like the horizontal rule in the way that it doesn't have a closing tag. As the name suggests, the line break is used to create a new line. Let's save this, preview it in our browser, and there you go. That's exactly what a line break does. It creates a new line. So we have 2 lines of text. So now in HTML, some people like to overuse the line break. We can get almost the same output by using the paragraph tags, creating a paragraph element. So let's save this and take a look in the browser. As you can see, we have relatively the same output, but the paragraph element has quite some spacing in there compared to the line break, which just creates a new line. But when working with text, the paragraph element is the preferred method. And as you can see, this looks much nicer than this. So another thing I want to talk about is actual spacing that gets rendered in the browser. So I'll demonstrate this by creating a new paragraph element. As you can see, in here I've added a few extra spaces. So let's see what the browser does for these extra spaces. So save it and preview it in our browser. So this is where we put the additional spacing, but as you can see, the browser only renders this as one single space. So let's try the same thing, but this time using the Enter key. Save it and preview it in our browser. As you can see, exactly the same thing, only one space is recognized in the browser. However, we can use the HTML entity for non-breaking space. This allows us to add in additional spacing where needed. So I'll show you this in action. Use the ampersand, NBSP semicolon. That's the non-breaking space HTML entity. And that lets us add an extra space into our HTML. So what we can do is we can copy that and paste it several times to create a greater space in between words. So let's save this and take a look in the browser. As you can see, now we have the additional spacing. I hope you've learned a little bit about the inline break element and spacing in HTML. So let's talk about inline elements. Inline elements are quite different to the block level elements group as inline elements do not necessarily affect the surrounding content in the same way that the block level elements do. So let's start off by looking at the span element, denoted by the opening and closing span tags. And I'm going to add some text after the span element. Save this and preview in our browser. Have a think about what the browser might render. As these are inline elements, they are essentially in line with the content that is not a block level element. So by that I mean we have an inline element and then we have some text after the inline element. And as you can see, they are rendered both on the same line. So now let's talk about text modifiers. Put in a line break. This is one of those times where a line break is actually handy. And we're going to start off with the strong element. So in HTML, we can define important text using the opening and closing strong tags. We can also use the emphasis element to render text with emphasis. So I'll go ahead and save this, open it up in our browser, and as you'll see, this is some strong text, which would be inside the strong element, is being rendered as bold text, and this is some text with emphasis, which would be inside the emphasis element, and it is being rendered with italic text. So I hope you've learnt a little bit about text modifiers and inline elements in HTML.